good evening. Welcome. This is Hot Edition on 3FM and 92.7. We're coming to you live from our studios here at John Hammond Street from our Desawe Kanda, also live on our affiliates across the country on 3news.com. We're live as well on Kesmi 107.1 in Tamale and beyond. Also live on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram at 3FM 927. Log on to Facebook, Twitter and Instagram right now. We're streaming live from our studios and you see exactly all the videos of the issues going to be talking about this evening. For the next 60 minutes, we'll give you the latest on the issues on current affairs, business, economics, and also sports and entertainment in the full bulletin for this evening. Coming up, Ghana's human rights record has once again been called into question in the last 2022 U.S. Department of State report, which has just come through. Among other things, instances of corruption, arbitrary arrest and killings, as well as the abuse against journalists, are eroding gains made in the democratic experiment of Ghana. Details coming up shortly. Also, Ghana's Food and Drugs Authority approves malaria vaccine, considered game changer in the country's efforts to control the malaria scourge. But the Ghana Health Service welcomes the development, but it says its technical team will study the report on the vaccine to determine its sustainability. Meanwhile, Ghana confirms invasion of a dangerous new mosquito breed. We'll tell you about the new mosquito in town and why you should be concerned about it, especially because it has also been discovered here in Accra, specifically Dansoman. We'll give you the details of these plus more coming up in the next 60 minutes. I am Alfred Ocansey. This is Hot Edition on 3FM 92.7. Let's get into the details now. Ghana's human rights status has once again been called into question in the latest 2022 U.S. Department of State report. Among other things, that the report captures instances of corruption, arbitrary arrest and killings, as well as abuse against journalists, are eroding gains made in the democratic experiment in this country. Ghana's economic challenges are well known and documented. Same could be said for other areas where the obvious has long been denied and discredited, but the 2022 U.S. Department of State report is bringing to the fore some of these issues once again. We'll get into the details of it right now. For instance, corruption and lack of transparency remains a challenge for Ghana as government failed, according to this U.S. Department of State report, to apply laws that provide criminal penalties for corruption by government officials frequently engaged in such practices with impunity. This is coming from the U.S. Department of State report. Another issue that they talk about, a number of reports have showed it. The U.S. Department of State cites them, including a Ghana Integrity of Public Services Survey July report, which found corrupt practices resulted in more than 5 billion cedis lost to the nation. The controversial La Bianca matter, in which improper issuance of customs advance rulings and markdowns of benchmark values by the Ghana Revenue Authority Customs Division led to the loss of revenue to the state. That's also captured in the report, as well as other investigations related to procurement and corruption being conducted by the special prosecutor as well. There's also the 2021 Auditor General's report, which found weaknesses and irregularities in government programs and its audit of more than 1.8 billion cedis in programs and funds. These are captured quite clearly in this report by the U.S. Department of State. In fact, the details as we're having it also borders on issues of arbitrary arrest and the application of the power of arrest. In fact, the 2022 arrest of Oliver Bakab-Vamawo, the convener of the Fix the Country movement, limitations on free expression and police impunity in Ghana were highlighted as human rights violations in the U.S. country report on human rights practices for 2022. The country is also cited for violating the rights of LGBTQ plus, targeting and the lack of investigation and accountability for gender-based violence. It was released some 2 days ago, that's April 2023, specifically on the 11th of April. The report highlighted, quote, significant human rights issues, included credible reports of arbitrary or unlawful killings, including extrajudicial killings, torture, or crucial issues related to inhuman or degrading treatment or punishment by the government or on behalf of the government. It's also noted as part of the report that, quote, arbitrary arrest or detention, serious restrictions on free expression and media, including violence and threats of violence against journalists, and unjustified arrests or prosecutions of journalists, substantial interference with the freedom of peaceful assembly. There were also cases of serious government corruption, lack of investigation of and accountability for gender-based violence, including domestic or intimate partner violence. The report also took an exception to crimes involving violence or threats of violence targeted at the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and intersex persons, laws criminalizing consensual same-sex sexual conduct between adults, although not fully enforced. So these are the details. Also, the report highlighted crimes involving violence or threats targeted at persons with disability as well. In fact, when you go onto 3news.com, you get the full details of this particular report as we have it, and then also the reactions that have come through as well related to this particular report and the details that are unfolding. And indeed, this has got a number of reactions as well, and also being monitored quite closely. We'll come back to this particular issue shortly. And what we've observed is that 3 people have been remanded in police custody for the alleged murder of a 28-year-old lady at Genasit near Kokotro in the Bekwai municipality of the Ashanti region. Prime suspect, Mary Akosia Ajiman, 25 years, is alleged to have accosted the deceased 28-year-old Vida Enim for gossiping about her over a man they have both dated. Now, that's what we're hearing now. And the 2 women got into a brawl Sunday evening over who rightfully deserves to be the fiancé of the man, and who is an excavator operator as well. Now, Mary is said to have left the scene of the brawl to buy a sharp knife. She allegedly returned to stab Vida in the face, breast, and palm. She bled to death. That's what we're learning now. And the Bekwai police later arrested Mary, also known as Sewa, together with 2 others, Felicia Sapon, 61 years, and Ernesta Chirem, 63 years, accused of attempting to shield Mary from arrest. If you go on our Facebook page right now, we have pictures of the deceased Vida and Nin, which we'll put up shortly and give you some more details as when they comes through here on Hot Edition on 3FM 92.7. Your thoughts are welcome as always. We're live on Facebook at 3FM 927, on Facebook at 3FM 927. We'll give you the details as they come through right now here on Hot Edition on 3FM 92.7. Now, Oliver Bakavomawo has also been speaking about the related issues and matters arising to this particular U.S. Department of State report, which we will get into shortly. Stay with us. We'll give you details as and when they come through and as things are playing out. But Ghana's approval of a malaria vaccine could be a game changer in the country's ongoing efforts to control malaria. Ghana is one of the 11 highest burden malaria countries, with 2.1% of global malaria cases and deaths and 1.9% global malaria deaths. The approval of a vaccine is therefore seen a significant step in combating the disease. The vaccine, developed by Oxford University, is for use in children aged between 5 and also 36 months. The vaccine, called R21, appears to be hugely effective, in stark contrast to previous ventures in the same field. Ghana's Food and Drugs Authority, FDA, after assessing the final trial data on the vaccine's safety and effectiveness, gave its approval for the vaccine's use. The Serum Institute of India is preparing to produce between 100 and 200 million doses per year. year, with a vaccine factory being constructed in Accra, Ghana. Head of Expanded Immunization at the Ghana Health Service, Dr. Kwame Mposachiano, tells 3FM the service will study the report on vaccine make and also a decision will be taken thereof.
I heard the news on BBC as well. I'm not too sure what the vaccine is all about, but for us in Ghana Health Service and by extension the immunization program, we already have a malaria vaccine. If you recall, we've interacted with the media on several occasions on the malaria vaccine pilot program that we're doing with 2 other countries. Of course, if we have multiple vaccines, that will be fine, but the bottom line is if you have multiple vaccines, you then weigh the pros and cons of each of them and then decide finally. There's a process we go through before we introduce a new vaccine. So in the first place, we are not the first country as it is now to say we've introduced a vaccine. There have been 3 countries, as I mentioned earlier, and we know that other countries are coming on board. For this particular vaccine, it's early days yet. We do not have information on that, but if it comes on board, why not? We'll be glad to look at it. Usually the process is that the ministry asks the National Immunization Technical Advisory Group to review the evidence and then advise appropriately, after which then the service, with directives from the Ghana, the Director General, goes and that's an application.
So that's what we do know now. That voice you just heard is the head of expanded immunization at the Ghana Health Service, Dr. Kwame Mposachiano, giving us details there and the position of the Ghana Health Service on this latest development. What we're also learning is that the Ghana Health Service has confirmed the invasion of a new breed of mosquito more dangerous than the Anopheles mosquito. Now, the new breed, known as Anopheles stephensi, is also a malaria-transmitting mosquito, very evasive and spreads faster and can adapt to a myriad of climate conditions, according to the World Health Organization. Ghana Health Service has established its presence. We understand, and they have been able to identify this new breed of the mosquito, what we're learning is called Anopheles stephensi, in Tuba and Dansoman. And they've warned residents to protect themselves. The Anopheles stephensi first invaded Africa in 2019. The countries include Ethiopia, Sudan, Somalia, and Nigeria, and unfortunately has been confirmed in Ghana just a few days ago. That's what we're learning now. We'll come back to the story, especially for us all to get to know the details of how we could also be protected and stay off this particular mosquito bite. And that we're learning now could be extremely dangerous. Now, to earlier story where the U.S., the human rights status is once, in fact, the Ghana has had its human rights status brought under the spectrum again, and issues of corruption as well being one of the major issues captured in the U.S. State Department's report, and the lack of transparency remains a challenge for Ghana. Adam Senano, who is the co-chair of the Citizens Movement Against Corruption, is joining us on the telephone. Ms. Senano, thank you so much for joining us on Hot Edition. First off, I know you've seen the details of this U.S. State Department report on corruption and human rights. Really, does this in any way give you any indication that there has been any improvement on the fight against corruption in this country?
Well, no, and there's nothing new about what they've captured. We are quite aware of most of the things that they put together. And yes, we need stronger leadership and responsiveness to the issues of corruption if we're going to make any inroads in this fight.
I see. Now, you talk about the fact that this is not new in the true sense of the word, but you see some of the things they capture in there, the issues about La Bianca, which we saw some directives, especially at least from the Special Prosecutor's Office, but there is no real conclusion to it, isn't it? Because of the politically exposed persons who had some relationship or ownership of this specific company, a member of the Council of State. Now, what would you expect that beyond this report captured by the U.S. State Department should be done to ensure that there's some conclusion or closure to some of these issues that have been captured in there?
Well, typically when issues of corruption come up and they are targeted at an institution or entity, leadership is supposed to then say, look, let there be an investigation. When the facts are laid bare, based on the facts, if somebody has been found culpable, what you do is you take the necessary actions, whether the person is relieved of their duties, whether they have to pay back monies or things that have been picked. So due process follows. And that's what responsive leadership does. I think that any time somebody associated with any government is, as it were, accused of something, it is important that leadership then takes the action that, you know what, you hold on, let's have justice, let's have investigation, let's ensure that the facts are well known, and on the basis of those facts, we then decide whether you still merit being associated with government or positions of trust or not. I feel that that's what should have happened in this case as well. That government itself should say, look, all the elements of the various accusations that have been labeled or that have come up ought to be thoroughly investigated. The facts should be considered, and on the basis of those facts, you decide whether positions being held should continue or whether we should distance ourselves and then allow the law to kick in. That is what then begins to demonstrate that we are responsive, we understand that we are accountable government, and we are truly promoting accountability and transparency.
In fact, there's a part of the report which complements some of the issues that you just talked about. And it says, and I quote, "Government of Ghana failed to apply laws that provide criminal penalties for corruption by government officials, frequently engage in such practices with impunity." And it goes on to say a number of reports have showed this. They cited the Ghana Integrity of Public Services Survey, July 2022 report, which found corrupt public officials and their practices resulted in more than 5 billion cedis lost to the state. Then they mentioned La Bianca, as well as other investigations related to procurement and corruption being conducted by the special prosecutor. They also mentioned the 2021 Auditor General's report, which found weaknesses and irregularities in government programs. I mean, a number of them. So really, apart from the leadership that is on the government side, how about the institutional leadership as well? Couldn't also that be the missing link that we are seeing here?
You see, we say that leadership is cause, everything else is effect. It starts from the top. If the posture at the top is that, look, we will not shield anybody. So at whichever other level of government there is some accusation, follow a certain process of saying, okay, you'll be asked to stay away for the duration of investigation. You'll be fully restored if we find that there are no legitimate, accusations against you. But if they are legitimate, we are going to make sure that the full rigors of the law kicks in. What it would then mean is that everybody else who is working understands that we need to follow through. When something's gone wrong, we expose it. We don't cover up. We don't allow any associations to therefore mean that therefore we can take action. So it starts right from the top. And when that kind of posture is demonstrated, you find that at all other levels, it will filter down because persons know that, look, if I'm the one who shields somebody, my neck is on the line. When we begin to do that those closest to us in our circles of influence and those at other level, immediately they are called out. And you are questioned on why you didn't ensure that such an individual, so let's say a key spending officer, who did invoicing that involved over invoicing, or who did not, as it were, follow up to recoup monies that had been expended but services or products not provided, or who executed a contract, as you found in the Auditor General's report, that had nothing to do with COVID. And has been asked to pay back. We when we shield such persons, all that we demonstrate, if government and leadership does not say that, look, we don't associate ourselves with these persons, we want them to be fully taken on board by the rigors of the law, and those culpable be fined and jailed and etc., then you send the wrong message, and then persons will then begin to just keep quiet, distance themselves, and we don't see the change we deserve.
And a lot can be said of the Auditor General as well, is it not? I mean, because if the Auditor General's report is one of the reports that this U.S. State Department's report makes reference to, so if the Auditor General's report or the Auditor General is failing to surcharge and disallow, then the Auditor General's job is almost useless, is it not? I mean, because after finding out the irregularities, and nothing is done to the persons who perpetrated the irregularity, they walk free or they refund the money after a long period, then that's the only punishment.
Yes, but on one side, we can clearly say that those required to do the auditing and do the reporting in the Agency Department have done their part. Because it takes a lot of professional skill to get the kind of outcomes in the report that have been captured. I think that then those who are required, as it were, to surcharge, to disallow and surcharge, to be more precise, and are failing to do so, are those who are failing, as it were, to exercise the authority that has been reposed in them to the detriment of society, and they ought to be taken on board. So in my mind, yes, the Auditor General's Department is performing to the extent that it churns out the reports, but then it is failing, and we can drill down, which is what should happen in all cases of corruption and fraud, etc. Let's drill down to the individuals involved. It's no use generalizing. It's always better, let's identify whose responsibility it is, who is failing, and let's take action. That way, we will ensure that systems begin to improve. So in this case, yes, the Auditor General is failing the good people of this country by not taking action where there is the power to do so.
Sir, as always, I thank you so much for your time.
And thank you for having me.
Great. Adam Sanders is the co-chair of the Citizens Movement Against Corruption. This U.S. State Department report did not also only bother on corruption. There was an aspect heavily on human rights abuses in various forms, and security matters as well were captured in the various aspects of the report. Joining me on the other telephone is Adib Sani, security analyst. Sani, thank you so much for your time on Hot Edition. So,
my pleasure.
Great stuff. The report captures the 2022 arrest of Oliver Bakavomawa, the convener of the Fix the Country movement, limitations on free expression and police impunity in Ghana, and then the issues of the violation of the rights of LGBTQ targeting and the lack of investigation accountability for gender-based violence. You've seen this report. In all, does it reflect the reality of the situation on the ground as we are seeing it play out?
It is an incontrovertible fact, it does. To a very large extent, Alfred. And, you know, for a lot of these data, some of us have spoken to. You know, usually they keep their ears on the ground and their eyes wide open, you know. So they see what is happening. And sometimes they speak with authorities within various fields. And I've had opportunities to speak, not with specificity to this report, but to a number of other, you know, reports, including one that was recently published by the Center for Strategic and International Studies. And one word can describe this report, Alfred. It is damning. It is damning, you say? Yes, it is damning. It is a serious indictment on the country. And let me quote a section of it. It says, quote, significant human rights issues included credible reports of arbitrary and unlawful killings, including extrajudicial killings, torture or cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishment by the government or on behalf of the government, arbitrary arrest or detention, serious restrictions on free expression, and media, including violence and threats of violence against
journalists and justified arrests or prosecutions of journalists. Alfred, we have seen all of these play out in our face. I mean, so I would be surprised if anyone seeks or debunks this. See what happened at Ayawaso West Wargon. So there's impunity. People were hurt, nobody, even though a body made up of very respectable people in society was put together to look into the issue. And from day one, I said, look, this thing is political. Don't pay attention to it. Then at the point, we paid attention to it. And in the end, what happened to the report? It was simply tossed into the bin. What happened with the 8 people who lost their lives? They are Ghanaians, my brother, during the last elections. To date, not a single individual has been held to account. 2016, not a single soldier was at any polling station. 2020, see, the whole system was virtually militarized, resulting in deaths. So these are things we talk about every day. And when we talk about it, people think we are taking sides and we are being political, but these are the hard truths. So, I mean, I don't think anyone would come out and say the U.S. is NDC. You see? So this is damning. And it gives us the opportunity to get introspective because the impunity is just unbelievable.
In fact,
you and I, what politicians can get away with when you and I try half of it, the NIB would come knocking on our doors. This is unfortunate. We don't run or govern a country like this. At a point when the people have enough, it might be cataclysmic. And we have a lot of lessons to learn from other countries, Chad, Niger, Sudan, Kenya, Ivory Coast, and the rest. Yet, it looks like we are not learning our lessons.
I see. But you see, this report also highlighted what is quoted here as significant human rights issues included credible reports of arbitrary or unlawful killings, including extrajudicial killing, torture or cruel, inhuman or degrading treatment or punishment by the government or on behalf of the government. And in this case, you're talking about the National Security and indeed the Ghana Police Service. Now, has enough been done, especially by these two institutions, to us to where respond to this and also correct these mistakes or the overactions that they see some of their personnel engaged in, the brutalities, and some of them taking the law into their own hands?
They say they are committed to, but I'm yet to see the commitment. Example, and the report, mentioned that as well. The Police Professional Standards Bureau, that is supposed to look into cases of police misconduct and unprofessionalism. Unfortunately, the quality of the findings, which is usually even shrouded in secrecy, you don't even get to know what happens when a police is investigated. But in the end, he is vindicated, and nobody knows what really happens. And a clear case in point is the killing of the Zungu guys, the Zungu men, somewhere around Kumasi. What happened to that case? What happened? We went there, gave them money, their families money, and that is it. Not a single person has been held to account. Ejura, people lost their lives. Not a single person has been held to account. So how can we run a country like this, my brother? Because the fear is we would paint a very dangerous picture and set in motion a very dangerous precedent. Because what it means is next election, people would have to watch their back by hook or crook means. So they would go like, okay, election time when you die, nobody would be held to account. So let me defend myself. Let me protect myself. And that is when you have them illegally acquiring firearms and going for the services of vigilante groups to protect the ballot boxes and to protect them and all that. So all of this has resulted in the erosion of public trust and confidence in the security services today. And the report also mentioned it. Now, military does almost everything in this country. But that is supposed to be done by the police. To the extent that military follows money from one part to another, my brother. Come on. Come on. Why is this done? To the extent military provides bodyguard services to VIPs in Ghana when it is supposed to be the work of the police. So are you telling me that in Ghana the police cannot provide guard services to transport money from one bank to another? That is an indictment. And that is unfortunate. See what happened at Ashama. The president never spoke about it. A lawyer. And that is what really shocks me. And that is what is painting a very bad image of Ghana out there. And for you to think that the diplomatic community, when they meet you, they are smiling with you and they are happy with you. No, they're not happy. You see? So we really need to be careful and ensure that there's respect for rule of law and make sure we don't destroy a very beautiful country that was established on the power of our forefathers.
Dipsani, I thank you so much for your thoughts on this. I appreciate it as always. Adib Sani, security analyst, joining us with his thoughts on this. You can find the full report on 3news.com. Make some time and visit 3news.com for the full report of the U.S. Department of State on issues of corruption, human rights abuse, and then also the killings, the arbitrary killings captured in that said report on Ghana. But Electricity Company of Ghana, Accra West Region, has uncovered the activities of 52 customers engaged in various forms of illegal connection. The company has also succeeded in retrieving 750,000 cedis worth of 550,000 kilowatts of electricity illegally used by the customers. Dr. Mark Owusu-Ansah, the Revenue Protection Manager, ECG, Accra West Region, said through their illegal activities, the customers did not pay for the electricity they used, denying the company much needed revenue. Examples of illegalities identified included meter bypass, meter tampering, and direct connections. He said the identification and arrest of the customers was made in the first 10 days of the company's ongoing exercise to retrieve all debt owed it and to monitor health of its meter installations. So keep an eye on that and definitely bring you some more. Go back to earlier story where a keenly watched malaria vaccine from Oxford University has secured its first approval in Ghana as the African country ramps up efforts to combat the mosquito-borne disease that kills a child every minute. The effort is one of the several focused on addressing the disease that kills over 600,000 people each year as children, most of them in Africa. The complicated structure and life cycle of the malaria parasite has long stymied the efforts to develop the vaccine. After decades of work, the first malaria vaccine, Mosquirix from British drug maker GSK, was last year endorsed by the World Health Organization, WHO, but a lack of funding and commercial potential has thwarted the company's capacity to produce as many doses as needed. Well, we have some news coming through from the Food and Drugs Authority here in Ghana. My colleague Emmanuel Samani sat through that press conference earlier today. He joins me on the telephone. Emmanuel, what is the FDA saying about this?
Thank you very much, Alfred. Now, we know that this vaccine has been a very long time coming. 3 decades as it's been in the pipeline. But today, the FDA granted approval to that R21 malaria vaccine manufactured by the Serum Institute of India. And you should know that it's been submitted through the local agent DEK, as we know that the approval has been granted following extensive series of reviews and peer reviews, as well as non-clinical and clinical quality parts of the vaccine. Now, this vaccine would have been approved for the immunization of children aged 5 months to 36 months against malaria caused by the Plasmodium falciparum. And so that is the latest coming in from the FDA. They have granted approval to this vaccine manufactured by the Serum Institute of India, Alfred.
Samani, thank you so much for this update. So there you have it. Emmanuel Samani, a health reporter, sat through the press conference earlier today by the Food and Drugs Authority approving or giving approval for this Oxford vaccine manufacturer, that's the Malarix, to be used in Ghana. What we're learning now is that after decades of work, the first malaria vaccine, Mosquirix, from British drug maker GSK, has then been approved for use in this country. So the development is that the Oxford vaccine, which has secured regulatory approval in the age group at the highest risk of death from malaria, that we're talking about children aged between 5 months to 36 months, has a manufacturing advantage thanks to a deal with Serum Institute of India to produce up to 200 million doses annually. Let's go on to the telephone now, and I've been joined by Samuel Arthur, who is a community health advocate. Ms. Arthur, thank you so much for joining us. How timely is this development for you, who knows the extent at which children are dying as a result of malaria in this country?
Yeah, so good evening, Alfred, and good evening also to your service. So this is great news, I guess. After several years, and just like you introduced, we've seen what the burden of malaria has been in country, particularly for children below the ages of 5, so from 0 to 5 years. So for me, apart from the burden generally of malaria, which actually is high in country, but across all age groups, and also particularly, like we said, children under 5, it is a great relief. For me, it's good news to know that at least we have a vaccine now that can protect children under 5 who are most vulnerable, who in most cases are not able to stand the parasites and its complications and lose their life daily as we record in our family. So for me, this is great news and it's welcome news. My only concern, which also is a concern generally for other vaccines and other antigens which are administered to children in countries, do we have the financial clout to be able to maintain and sustain this? How are we going to roll this out? Are we going to do it in a manner that every child, irrespective of where the child finds himself, his or herself, can have access to this vaccine timely enough so they can also be protected? Now, so I'm looking at this into long term if we have the financial muscles to be able to hold this, because we've seen situations where even for other antigens that we have our development partners taking up almost about 80% of the cost. We get to situations where we have shortages because we are not able to meet our counterpart funds obligations. So good news, but of course we need to work hard to be able to maintain and sustain this so we can get all the gains we are looking for.
I see. Now, I've read other medical literature which also raises concern about Ghana's immediate approval of this because, and they make reference to the fact that the data from an ongoing phase 3 clinical trial in Burkina Faso, Kenya, Mali, and Tanzania that has enrolled 4,800 children is expected to be published in a medical journal in the coming months. So the phase 3 clinical trial results is yet to be published. Although the phase 1 and 2 showed the vaccine effectiveness was 80% in the group that received the higher dose of the immune boosting adjuvant component and 70% in the lower dose adjuvant group. So what do you agree or otherwise with those who raise questions about our immediate approval of this vaccine?
Great. You see, so I want to be sure, and I know particularly also that for the FDA to approve this, it means the FDA has all the figures, has all the data, which is pointing to one, safety, which is pointing to efficacy, and also a drug which is generally will not create a lot of complications for children. So our FDA is competent enough to be able to look at this. And based on data they have, unfortunately, I am not privy to all this. I'm yet to get a full report on what our trials and the outcomes have been. But I want to believe that because if we have the stamp of the FDA, because of the capacity it has and how it has operated over time in country and the mandate it has, I am convinced that at least this medicine will be safe for children and it's efficacious and will be able to help us deal with the problem that we are dealing with. So for me, we may also want to wait to get other data from other countries. But you see, we are a sovereign country. And based on data and information that we have that liberty to be able to approve or disapprove a drug based on the information that we have. So we may just have to be a bit more careful. We may want to rather be a bit more positive and look forward, a bit more optimistic, and hope that this vaccine, this breakthrough we are all talking about, we can be able to roll it out and get the gains that we are all looking at. For me, if we can make a lot more gains in the area of malaria and prevent the infections among children and, for that matter, the fatality, it's a win for us all, and I'm sure it will go to improve our economic situation. Parents and caregivers will also have some breathing space because they eventually will not be visiting the clinic as often as they do because of malaria incident.
Okay, and before I let you go, Ms. Atta, quickly, we understand that even though after this breakthrough, when there's been the discovery of a new breed of the mosquito, which is more evasive and more dangerous than the Anopheles mosquito. They're talking about Anopheles stephensii, which has now been seen in Tuba and Dansoman. So what should residents or people who are listening to us do to protect ourselves?
I guess we have done this and we continue to do this. And let me take this as an opportunity also to draw a little light on this for us all to be cautious. You see, the parasite that causes malaria, irrespective of whatever brand or breed it is, we all have identified that it is deadly and it can cause death. It has caused death and fatality. So for me, we still have one way that we can prevent the vector, which is the mosquito, which is the insecticide-treated bed net, which we have to make sure that mostly pregnant women and children under 5, if we have them in our homes, we need to make sure that they will sleep in this bed net. Adults also are encouraged to ensure that they will sleep under these bed nets so they are protected from the bites from this mosquito that actually also passes the parasite. As much as possible, most of us that stay outdoor for very long, we may want to reduce our outdoor exposure and staying outside, because outside you cannot control the mosquito and that. So largely, let's all be cautious. And when we begin to see signs, when we obviously have done all the protection and we still get the infection, when we begin to see signs of malaria, let's quickly report and then get the test. And once it's confirmed, let's begin treatment as soon as possible.
Zata, I thank you so much for this very timely information coming through. Appreciate it.
Very grateful, Alfred, for all the good work you're also doing.
Thank you. Samuel Arthur is a community health advocate who's joining us on this. So, Nanekia, this is to you and many other people. Reduce your evening outings because of this mosquito that has been found, the new breed, Anopheles stephensii. Very dangerous and invasive.
I'm assuming you are talking to yourself, because I know you are an early bird to rise up and a late bird to go and sleep. So this is for you. Anyway, let me still stick to my numbers. so it looks like the IMF deal has a lot of voices being pushed to the creditors. This time around, the Ogboro herself.
Who's that?
The boss, the IMF boss, Kristalina Georgieva, has added her voice
to this,
asking the bilateral creditors to help the country get the economy back on track. And we'll also be hearing from the finance minister as well as the governor of the Bank of Ghana, who are telling investors on the sidelines of the spring meetings in Washington that Ghana expects a deal in second quarter. So we have all the details here.
Yeah, I'm seeing May and others, and well, the likes of Professor Lord Mensah cautioning government not to be giving timelines, because we've seen a number of timelines just, elapse without this deal.
Well, let's wait and see what happens. But IMF boss Kristalina Georgieva is urging creditors to act swiftly to help Ghana complete its deal with the fund. She says Ghana has a long track record of sound macroeconomic management and therefore ought to be supported to return to market. She was speaking at the spring meetings in Washington, D.C.
We have been in constant contact with the authorities in Ghana. We have worked very hard and very swiftly to have the a program for Ghana, 3 billion support program for Ghana in place. We have been urging Ghana's creditors to act swiftly. My appreciation for also the proactive role of the Minister of Finance of Ghana in reaching out to creditors. We are expecting that next week there will be discussions among creditors. A country that has long track record of sound macroeconomic management ought to be supported to return to markets. So our program is a bridge for Ghana, and to tell you the truth, I'm actually quite optimistic. I think Ghana is going to move. The creditors are going to move, and we are going to move swiftly. So I guess the short answer to you is stay tuned and stay positive.
And that was IMF boss Kristalina Georgieva there. Meanwhile, government has told investors in Washington, D.C. that it expects Ghana's bailout request from the International Monetary Fund to receive board approval in the second quarter this year. In a presentation to investors at the sidelines of the spring meetings, Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta and Governor of the Central Bank, Dr. Ernest Addison, said Ghana expects financing assurances from the Official Creditor Committee ending April through to May. Government of Ghana is seeking a $3 billion bailout from the IMF. My colleague Sani Abdulrahman is in Washington, D.C. and takes up the rest of the report.
We just had the managing director of the International Monetary Fund giving some sort of assurances from the part of the fund as to their readiness to grant the bailouts the country has been asking for. That's one side of the conversation. The other side has been with creditors, and you heard in there she indicating that they have been also urging creditors to accelerate the creditor talks, the formation of the creditor committee, and look at the possible debt reliefs they could offer to Ghana to help secure the bailouts that is before the International Monetary Fund. What we know is that the finance minister also today has been engaging investors. He has been trying to rally investors as he has some sort of a bit of certainty, if I should put it that way, regarding the board approval, because we've heard from the international partners, for example, we've heard from the U.S. government, we've heard from the Chinese government, all giving some sort of commitment and support towards the program. They're giving the assurances that the needed support that should come from their side would be received so that they can, of course, help us achieve what we are seeking to achieve. So largely, there's been some sort of goodwill in Washington here among creditors and even among the development partners. And that, I think, is the source of the certainty that the finance minister has stood on today to give an indication that a program can be reached by the end of May.
Lots of assurances there. That was my colleague Sani Abdulrahman with the updates there. Let's listen to the finance minister now.
The need and the sense of fierce urgency to conclude our discussions with the Paris Club for them to then submit the assurances to the fund. I think Ghana has done a number of things. First of all, with regards to the Paris Club, we did travel to China. We've sought support from India and the Saudis, and then really maintained an open relationship with the club. We did get in to the club, letting them know that we were worried about the track record of the common framework. We have had good reception. We really do commend the Paris Club for the sense of urgency that they have, and we are confident that they will be able to bring the assurances.
And you heard the Finance Minister, Ken Ofori-Atta. Remember that we'll be giving you more updates on happenings at the spring meetings as our man on the ground, Sani Abdulrahman, trickles them down. Well, let's move away from the spring meetings and matters arising. The director of the Africa Digital Economy Forum, Derek Lai, is suggesting a digital policy which appreciates the current communication needs. This follows several concerns raised by consumers about the country's internet services, the recent being MTN's data bundle zone, which has been scrapped.
Come back, step back, and take the appropriate regulatory steps in making sure that you create a level playing environment. If you don't do that and you hand it over because you want the money as a government, and you take the spectrum money and then now you give one person a first mover advantage of the business, you literally create that sense of monopoly we see today. Then you step back to now attempt to use regulatory directives to now correct it. And so we come to SMP. Government needs to release the spectrum that is sitting on, because if you are sitting on a property or you are sitting on an asset that belongs to the people that needs to be used, and you are holding it because you are looking for a heavy upfront payout from a service provider that does not have the money, you are doing a great disservice to the market. You are doing a great disservice to the people that you are holding the assets for on their behalf.
And that was the director of Africa Digital Economy Forum, Derek Lai. They're ending it for the business segment on Hot Edition. Tonight with me, Nana Ikuya-Mensah Brampa. Oreko Ampofo comes up shortly with the latest from the world of sports.
Yeah. Oreko, does Chelsea have its chance going to this return leg?
Lampard said that Stamford Bridge have had special nights, and so he's told the players to be ready for one.
For a special night?
Yes.
With this crop of players?
That is all I can see. Special nights.
Let's get into what you have, shall we?
Well, we do start off with the Ghana under-17 team. That's the Black Starlets. And they did play in the UEFA under-16 four-nation tournament earlier today against Serbia's under-16 team. The Black Starlets came out victorious with a 4-0 win over their counterpart, Benjamin Chivano, scoring a hat-trick in the first half before a free kick from Ajete Nieje Theophilos wrapped up the victory for the Black Starlets. But moving away from that, let's talk about some African football, because Morocco are making huge strides in the terrain and putting the continent on the map, but it looks like other African countries are lagging behind. And seasoned African journalist Osasu Obayuwana explains why.
The GPL is a shambles, you know it. In the 60s, in the 70s, Kotoko, Hearts of Oak, Great Olympics. These were teams that were respected in Africa when they go and play in the African competitions. Where is Kotoko? Where is the Hearts of Oak? Even Great Olympics, where do they exist still? Our club football in sub-Saharan Africa has gone down. And the only clubs in sub-Saharan Africa that are doing well are the clubs that have millionaire owners that can prop them in a way that it doesn't matter whether the domestic leagues are doing well or not.
And so that was what Osasu Obayuwana had to say concerning why most sub-Saharan African countries aren't performing well when it comes to football. But let's stick with football and talk about the Europa League because there's going to be a repeat of the 2020 semi-finals of the competition when Manchester United host Sevilla at the Old Trafford much later tonight. The lineups are out for both sides, but before we go through that, let's hear from the Red Devils coach Erik ten Hag.
Keep the discipline in defending, pressing in the defense transition, especially in defending the set plays. And I think we're making good progress, but we have to keep that process going. And because we are not satisfied, we want to do more. And we know if you want to win leagues, if you want to win competitions, clean sheets is also always the base of it.
and that was Eric Ten Hag. In terms of how he set up his team, no Marcus Rashford due to injury, and we do have Anthony Martial starting his first game after coming back from injury. Behind him is Jadon Sancho, Bruno Fernandes, Anthony in midfield, Sabitzer alongside Casemiro, who returns into the starting 11. It's a back four of Wan-Bissaka, Varane, Martinez and Malacia with David De Gea in goal. For Sevilla, it's Bruno, Montiel, Nyanzu, Marçal and Acuna for the defensive side. And in midfield, there's Fernando and Guedes. Up front is Ocampos, Rakitic, Torres and Lamela. There's an ongoing game in the Europa League quarter-final. AS Roma playing away to Feyenoord. Pellegrini of Moreno's side missed a penalty in the 43rd minute. It's still 0-0 between the two sides. Man United face Sevilla at 7 p.m. That's how we wrap up the sports. Up next on Hot Edition is entertainment with Akofa.
Alrighty, Oroku, thank you so much. Now, coming up on entertainment tonight, renowned Ghanaian dancehall artist Stonebwoy has held a pre-listening session for his forthcoming album Fifth Dimension. Works on the 17-track body of work were played to patrons as the music star took time to share the backstory to the songs as well as the creative process which went into putting the album together. According to the multiple award-winning artist, the album is an invitation to the global world to listen to the rich sounds of Africa. Artists featured on the project include Davido, Shaggy, Angelique Kidjo, and Maforisa. Others are Jazz Cara, Stuart Savage, and Dexter Dabbs. The project comes with songs like Life and Money, Far Away, More of You, Therapy, featuring Oxlade and Forget. The 17-track album comes 3 years after his last album, Anglonga Junction. Stonebwoy's pre-listening session for his Fifth Dimension studio album was graced by critics, journalists and other key industry stakeholders. The Entertainment caught up with some of them to share their thoughts on the body of work.
Stonebwoy has set a new record for the entire industry, because over the years we have always been anticipating for the next level for Stonebwoy. And if you listen to this whole album from number one to the last track, I can tell you that Stonebwoy is over-matured. I mean, over-matured for the Grammys. This is a Grammy collection, because there's a category in the Grammys that you need a certain sound and a certain element to be able to qualify. And that's what Stonebwoy has presented. So for me, I'm so happy that Stonebwoy has crossed over from a dancehall artist, from the regular dancehall artist to a world-class artist. So for me as a Ghanaian, I would say that Stonebwoy is the new pick for the Grammy.
We all, like, as an industry, we have to actually, like, let's push this album. Let's not say, oh, it's Stonebwoy's album, so we are not going to push it. This is like our album. This is an album well put together, So let's all push this album to break, some boundaries for everybody to enter, to break to open some doors for all of us.
It's been an amazing session with Stonebwoy's Fifth Dimension. The album is literally on fire. This is a winner, and I can't say this enough, because you see, there are so many points about it. I'm loving the flow. I'm loving the melodies of the various songs. I'm loving the lyrics. Stonebwoy, you cannot take consciousness out of Stonebwoy's lyrics, and he will dish them out to you in a very creative way, all right? So you will have that certainly, and I'm loving the vibe that comes with each of the songs, all right?
Some critics, journalists and key industry stakeholders there sharing their thoughts on the pre-listening session for Stonebwoy's Fifth Dimension studio album. Finally, before I go, this Sunday, all roads lead to the Accra International Conference Center as 6 promising talents face off in a bid to grab the bragging rights and other packages at stake at this year's season 14 of Kids reality show Talented Kids. The finalists include dance group MFC, young poet Eloquence, singer Abdul Rahman, Thatness models, dancer Abigail and Emily. Now, the poised finalists say they will be bringing their A game at the last showdown. Grab your tickets at the premises of TV3 for 30 Ghana cedis and support your favorite contestant to victory. That's all the entertainment news here on Hot Edition, powered by 3 Entertainment. My name is Akofa, and I'm back later at 8 p.m. with Wind Down.
Wind it down.
Yep.
Wind down.
Affirmative.
Indeed. Akofa, thank you.
Thank you,
So
Alfred.
it's now the 2024 flag bearer hopeful of the National Democratic Congress, NDC, John Dramani Mahama, says the appointment of politically exposed persons to the Electoral Commission is evident that the new patriotic party fears losing the 2024 elections. Addressing some party delegates as part of his Eastern Region tour, he encouraged party faithful to protect their votes in the upcoming general elections.
Yepese ye frenchim ye sisi obia ye so ye mpese obia be sisi en enti ebeto mana ye frenchim na mi ogidi nyame dim inshallah say ye frenchim a NDC be dim kode enzu na to me who say ehun aka omo enti omo de omo party for and omo de omo call EC Electoral Commission na say appointments omo ye wo hwe nkrofo no baby omo free and your mama ye omina MPP for complete and omo de omo akoto EC so and so yeah be to say Azuma Nelson.
Meanwhile, he has expressed dissatisfaction over the abandoned Abetifi Hospital project and other similar infrastructure projects abandoned across the country. According to him, it costs the nation more if projects initiated by one government is not completed by the successive administration.
Any first class hospital like Kayesi, Ewa Betifi, you feel a bemu, and a Omweja to home. Ama, baby, I see through you know, hospital not say, and you are saying no. I feel put them to say, Omo Moton scrap, Akum, and that one holding a scrap.
As the former president, John Mahama, also flag bearer hopeful of the NDC ahead of the 2024 elections. Well, that's it for Hot Edition on 3FM 92.7. The drive continues with Giovanni AJ and DJ Faculty. Join me at 10 p.m. on TV3 for Ghana Tonight. I'm Alfred Ocansey. Good evening.